All right, my friends, let's talk about cycles, human design cycles. Let's chat for a bit. There's going to be quite a lot of information here. If you feel overwhelmed, like it's a little bit too much, remember, you can take your time with this. Cycles, I have noticed, they are a lifetime process. It's a lifetime opportunity to learn about your experience of being you in relational context to life. So there's going to be potentially for some of you who are newer to design, somewhat of an overwhelm because I'm using a lot of different keynotes in a very specific way. And we're going to be orienting you to different times of your life, different cycles that you've either gone through or have yet to go through when it comes to this work. And it's the most fascinating thing, I'll tell you, it's the thing that I use the most when it comes to any analysis. And that might sound kind of strange. Any analysis, Laveena, really? Yeah, it's just my tendency as far as what I've developed that works for me. So the way that I'm going to teach you is orienting you to this global consciousness program, the global orchestration directory, Ra would call it, the gods, if you will. Global orchestration directory, gods. Because we live in this solar cell, and that in living within the solar cell in context, of course, we've got the earth here, Mama Earth, grounded, the light grounding into form principle. We are the ones who get imprinted, genetically speaking, by these wandering stars out here, as the ancients used to call them. Because neutrinos, the neutrino ocean that we're all bathed in, swimming in the sea, in the soup of, because the neutrinos are the byproduct or the breath of stars, and they are both energy and mass. They carry information. They are the information feed for the consciousness program. So as we are consciousness embodied in this form, the frequency field that is bombarding all of us, it is translated by this form, and we are conscious of it, or we can be, particularly if you've been studying this for a while. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Neutrino ocean, that is the byproduct of stars. Again, 70% of the neutrino ocean stream bombarding you and me, but it's pumping us full of this energetic information. That's what's programming us in context with where are the planets at as we are being imprinted through this feed. And that happens for the rest of our life. It's just that the moment of birth and 88 degrees before your moment of birth, those are the concretization of what this form is designed to learn about and live through. So because neutrinos travel at 186,000 miles a second, and science discovered that neutrinos oscillate, in other words, they react to matter. When they oscillate, they take on a relationship with what they're oscillating with, like a red car and a white car banging into each other. Paint's going to rub off on each of the cars. So as neutrinos fly through you and I, Pluto, Earth, they pick up and they leave information. That means then we feel the effects of the planets around us, and we affect everything beyond us, which is quite interesting. These transits, how we get our natal imprint is the moment of birth and 88 degrees before, but these transits, meaning the wandering stars, if you will, because in the ancients they looked up, they couldn't differentiate those stars that wandered against the backdrop of stars beyond. You know, they look quite similar. It's just that, oh, the planets, they actually move. So our crystals of consciousness both receive and transmit information. What this means literally is that you're affecting everything all the time. You've ever thought about that? You. Not only is everything affecting you, but you are being affected too and affecting others. So within our solar cell, we have the power of the sun, the dynamic power of the earth. Remember this yang and yin balancing, this electromagnetic of the yin and the yang. We live out the Tao between the two, these two great forces of form and energy, both aspects of matter, and being able to come into awareness of what it's like to experience being consciousness in form. What we find is when we align is that even though life may still show the challenges, the upsets, the things we may or may not prefer consciously, that the body, the vehicle gets more comfortable, that you indeed become more comfortable in your own skin. And this right here, cycles analysis, is one of the most important classes to pay attention to. Pay attention to you as that energy moves through. So if we were to throw up into the air a deck of cards, let's imagine now all of those planets, yeah, those stars, not just our moon, but there are moons, all that changes the way in which we interpret the energy, how we get that feed, depending on where in that backdrop of stars, these planets, these wandering stars are in front of that particular feed. The extracellular matrix, meaning outside of our solar system, affects us too. That's a lot of energy that we have to move through. Now, they don't have the kind of energy that we do because we have a microcosm within the macrocosm. We get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So each individual planet has its own thing going on, like Jupiter. All hail Zeus, you know, whatever you think of him. The holder of the Akashic records, according to Ra. If you don't know what that is, look it up. We have been able to observe this program for a very long time as human beings, but the program has been shifting and it will continue to shift. Not only the background frequency field shift that you hear me talk about all the time, 2027 and beyond. However, before we were 9-centered, we were 7-centered. And in those days, that creature experienced the planets in a different way. Why? It was a 7-centered construct. And we who are 9-centered, Homo sapien and transitus, we project different energies on different planets now than we would have done long time ago. They are going through different cycles, evolutionarily speaking, accordingly to how we interpret those energies. So if you go and look way back in history, and you can, I want you to know that in Ra's Black Book, he said that we as human design students could go and study the planets through astrology. You can find when Saturn was actually an exalted thing. And then it goes through the dark ages where Saturn now is the bringer of death, you know? And in our modern day, we can see it as discipline. Now, you can go through that microcosm, macrocosm flow, if you will, as well in your own life. As an example, when you see Saturn at the beginning of one's life as discipline from father, or being able to grow up, because the Saturn cycle, 30s, delineates the end of your childhood. And some people are like, yay, and some people are like, oh, you know, it's different for everybody. And I love my Saturns now. I mean, I love Saturn now. Thank God. Thank God for Saturn. Truly. It's one of your reincarnative purposes, as in, what is your work here? What will you have discipline for? What are you here for? So every single planet, as we move through, when you looked at all the hexagrams and line qualities and how the planets can affect in the exalt or detriment, that's one thing. But now as we move through cycles, and all these planets have cycles, the moon has cycles, Mercury, Mars, Venus, they all have cycles. We in human design focus on the large life cycles of Saturn, Uranus opposition, and Chiron return, or Chiron, some people say too, as well as for especially the reflector type, we'll look at the moon. And of course, you can look at your solar cycle, your annual life cycle. Okay, those are the most important above and beyond your foundation analysis. Annually, do your life cycles, please. It'll give you good practice when it comes to this work. So this planetary program has become the gods' global orchestration directory, the gods, if you will. And they are the rulers of our lives because they control that program. Example, and I know this from human experience, and I'm always going to teach you from human experience what it's like to be me, because it shows the experiential process that you can't get anywhere else. And I want each of you to do this for you and for us too, wherever it's right for you to share. Laveena's Jupiter relationship in gate 45 is that anytime he comes in, and Jupiter takes about 12 years to go around the wheel, anytime he comes into gate 45 like he is now, no energy for the material plane. I don't feel like promoting. I don't feel like being up there, hey, come join my course. The way you see my classes being like, not so much. Feeling incredibly powerless, and whatever circumstances or events that I happen to be in every 12 years, powerlessness. That's Jupiter's effect on my own Venus in gate 21, line 3. So yes, we have cycles of experience, greater life cycles, but also each of these planets have cyclical processes in your own design. How does this planet affect you? Wherever it may be, however often it comes into contact with aspects of your own nature. I want you to start taking a look at that, because what can happen is you start to be aware that you are beyond compare, that there is no question that you're here for differentiation. When it comes to being differentiated, it means then that you are aware, okay? Mechanics without awareness, very dangerous. I'm paraphrasing Ra. I have seen in this industry people paying lip service to mechanics without being aware of being their own nature and beyond compare, and still playing out the old dead seven-centered trip of measurement and trying to one-up or whatever it is that they're addicted to, self-flagellation, not aligning to what's true. So instead of looking at these planets, please, God, move, Jupiter, move out of this gate. You can't affect that. You could be aware, and you could recognize, going back to your source of the integrity of making a decision that you can trust, strategy, your authority, being your own authority, not giving anybody else power over you, because the power in recognition of what's true, which is the fact we are in constant contact with everything around us. This is our connection to the gods. Everything is connected up with everything else. And when you recognize that, even though it looks like an illusion of duality, even though you are a specificity, you are here to come into contact with individuals when it comes to each other, and that there is not a separation of choice. It is karma, destiny, fate when we come into contact with certain people. Alex is saying surrender. Yeah, you got the channel of surrender? Surrender. Hey, it's great. Now, if we look at it in a different context, mental awareness of surrender. It's not your body surrender. Surrender is mental in the experiment, meaning not paying attention to the internal I that masquerades as self. It is not you. It's not you. And it's not always true. Anything that disempowers you, question that thought. Because we live in this cosmic sea of neutrino ocean moving at almost the speed of light, billions and billions of neutrinos passing through Earth, penetrating everything all the time. It's an exchange of information, again, moving through me, going through the earth, and on to you. If you're on the other side of that, that happens. So as we look through a life, we're going to look at Ra's life from the perspective of what cycles could be analyzed. You'll really get a kick out of this as far as how does this work? How does this work? See these little suns every year? Okay, we're going to go and see what's clear. That prenatal imprint, of course, Ra's unconscious nature of being, structuring a design of an individual freak. Some people say geek, some people say individuality. Now we see that it's coming from the nodal environmental context. This means that the passenger consciousness had no identification with that I. And we remember that nodes are developmental. We begin on one side, ending on the other. When they're in a channel, this is the environment that was really filled with different kinds of people, perfect for his fulfillment of being a messenger, of bringing forth, heralding a new way forward, a new system. 1948 was his prenatal imprint. If we look over at the postnatal, or I guess the natal imprint, and then everything beyond, all the openness. But here now we see the definition of somebody who is definitely here to be first, initiation, a design of needing to be first, in awakening, channel of awakening, design of higher principles, in order to perfect the form, the design of survival, on the brain wave, as in this penetrating intuitive awareness now. This personality principle of what Ra came here to do, perfectly built to handle the shock and unconsciously able to walk the path of mutation, mental mutation, in order to provide those answers in attunement with the great mysteries and ground them in the world to the form what he thinks, his particular way of providing the depth and such. So when we look at somebody's design like this, powerful manifested impact, we're looking at just a frozen moment in time, a frozen moment in time. And that means then that everything that happened beyond that is something that we can analyze in perspective or in contrast to what his original design came here to do. Now, if we didn't have transits, he would never get to the fullest fulfillment and experience and expression of the life's work. Why? Because he'd be dead. Because transits happen to everyone all the time, all kinds of transits all the time. So what you're going to notice then is that when you start to layer a chart, a transit chart on top of another chart, all you're doing is you're putting other people into context with the chart, not just a chart plus a chart, two people together. That was connections. Now we're looking at many people potentially. And as you go through this, you're going to see that it's not so hard to analyze. It's just in the beginning, there's a lot of information that may feel a little overwhelming. Every year, as an example, solar return. This is going to be your homework assignment because it's the most complex and personal reading. It's the most important one to get done above and beyond your foundation analysis every year, 3 months before your birthday. That is the ideal window to get it. That's not to say that you can't get it beyond your birthday. A couple days later, a week, a month, no big deal. But ideally, 3 months before, as early as 3 months before your birthday, because it shows now this imprinting, the day-to-day challenges and growth opportunities that one person might have as an option for this next cycle, this next year. It's going to show you what can distort, may distort, or will, in fact, distort your life and challenge you to be your own authority too. Your strategy, honoring yourself as your own authority, Always bring you or your client back to that, because the yearly cycles are not necessarily good. In fact, Ra wants you to look at them as bad, as in pulling you away, in order to save the day, help that client be themselves. What will try us, what will challenge us, what we will be meeting, who we will be meeting, what we will be learning, it's all there. And because you are beyond compare, and each of us are our own authority, you do this work best, especially in retrospect from a previous cycle or a previous year, if your brain works that way. If it doesn't, you're having a hard time, maybe you do somebody else's chart. If you're a projector, you want to do their chart so that you can dialogue with them and get, feedback and find solutions. It may be a bit of a challenge to do this work. I'm not going to lie. It's the hardest stuff to do. Okay. Eventually, once you get keynoting down, once you get the principles down, so much easier. Now I can do it, like without having to spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to figure out, wait, what? So please don't be hard on yourself if this particular semester challenges you. If you need to repeat it, there are people in this class that are repeating, no worries. You're welcome, okay? Now, that's your homework assignment. That's the hardest one to do, the solar return. Saturn's easy. Saturn, Uranus, Chiron, super easy. I'll tell you why. Even though it's extremely important, the most important thing that you're going to focus on is that incarnation cross, okay? Whatever the new incarnation cross is that comes through. Because this Saturn theme is how you are here to mature, to begin to integrate as a being into the new Uranian life. What does it mean to be Uranian? 9-centered. So Saturn is where discipline comes in. Saturn, restriction, constriction, restraint. It helps us to grow up because he, like the shepherd's crook, I often think of as far as the symbology, keeping us on the straight and narrow path. There is a time here now where life is just so much more in your face. For Ra, it was 1976. Left angle cross of wishes, the 6-2, movement towards purpose. That's what we want you to think of each of these cycles as a movement towards purpose. So for Ra, in teaching the program, he saw that it was often more useful this session after it was passed. So for 3.5 years before and 3.5 years after that Saturn cycle, that's the orientation we want to take our clients through at the most intensity of the experiential process. That is better off done at the end of the 7-year cycle. That means 3.5 years after their Saturn cycle. Before it, it's mental conditioning. Before it, you're trying to figure it out. If you want to try and figure it out, fine, but just know it's not necessarily what you think it's going to be. And oftentimes to a mind who is still in not self, I'm telling you from experience, I looked at my Uranus opposition, because I came into this in my Saturn, looked at my Uranus and went, oh, I don't want to do that. That looks horrible. And I was really downtrodden and beaten and, oh. The mind will take up any excuse to get into fear mode. Okay. Now, that was Saturn. Uranus, this one, 1986 for Ra, 4-1, fixed fate, okay? Fixed fate. Now, Uranus represents a change in one's life as far as the opposition is concerned, meaning it's not a full cycle because it moves so weirdly, wacky, and wonderfully, and it takes a long time to get back, okay? 84 years, approximately. So that means the halfway marker or the demarcation point for the Uranus opposition can be anywhere between 38 and 44 years of age. Wow, that's weird. as in, we have people who are maturing, going through their quote unquote midlife crisis, potentially at 38 or even as late as 44. So this is the period in which you master the presentation that you're going to make when you reach your Chiron return, 50 and beyond. Okay, so again, movement towards purpose. This is the cycle cross, juxtaposition cross of ideas for Ra. Ideas. Did he bring out some ideas during that time of his life? You bet your bottom dollar. You know, he was definitely going through a lot of process work in order to come to grips with what he came here for. Now, that's all you analyze. It doesn't have to be a big, hairy deal. However, for people who are very advanced, like you and me, that's not going to satisfy us to just be told, oh, it's time for some new ideas. No, there's a lot more things that we can go into, okay, so that you can practice and play or give deeper, richer, fuller forms of analysis. However, same thing happens here. 3.5 years before, 3.5 years after, it takes 7 years for you to fully embrace this change. And this change is from taking in life experience versus exhaling life experience. So it's movement, again, movement towards purpose. This is the time when you move from your south node stage into your north node stage. The halfway life of a nine-centered being, halfway mark of a nine-centered being, 38 to 44. Okay, I will give you training on each of these. This is just an overview. So now the Chiron is the full flowering of a human's life purpose. It's not just movement towards purpose, it is purpose. It's the new costume that you're learning to wear in order to fulfill your life's work. So it is good conditioning, absolutely necessary for you, for your clients too, to fulfill their life's work. Here is the stage upon which your life is set. And here is the opportunity where you have the potential to live out your life's fullest purpose. So this one, cross of contagion, 2-4, at 50 years old, right angle cross of contagion. So his heralding a new message in this age of change, being called to contribute an empowering new direction in order that a network, the network he began as his 4-1 cross of ideas ran, because remember, these cycles, they're layerings, and you never really leave them behind. If we were to imagine like your life, your body is your life, and your life brings you the crystallization of particular life experiences, like as if you got stabbed somewhere, you would have some healing happen there. You would have some scar tissue, okay? You have pain there, maybe some residual pain there because it's a really bad one, whatever. The body, this life, it has memory. The body keeps the score. If you want to learn about that, there's a book on that. Body keeps the score. Memories are in the cells, the cellular matrix of the body. So as you've gone through, if you're older like me, gone through your Saturn cycle, growing up, the fires of letting go of the old, letting go of childish things in order to grow up, and then going through your Uranus opposition, that's just layering on top. But the intensity is that 7-year process around. However, Saturn lasts the rest of your life. It's just that when Uranus comes, it comes to the fore. Okay, all of these different actions that you're learning about in context with people or circumstances or events. So it's kind of like, those timers, those sand, what are they called? Timepieces, where you can just flip the sands and you see the time running out. Certain cycles, they do that, but the sand's still there. Yeah, you've already gone through that experience. So if We are forged in the fires of our Saturn and tempered by the Uranus opposition. Let's say, forged in the fires of Saturn, that would be like a forest fire, you know, the fire burning everything off, charring things away that we no longer need. And then out of the fertile soil, because in order for the ground to be fertile, sometimes the ancient, maybe not that ancient, but Indians used to deliberately burn valleys every year in order that there was fertile soil for all those seeds to pop and grow. So Uranus, it's a layering on top of your Saturn, but then it comes to this fore, and now you are doing the work of whatever it is, the wacky weirdness of you being you. And then in the expression too, what becomes of you in your Chiron is that this is the full flowering stage, your unique, differentiated you-ness in context with learning a new way to be the nine-centered reality, if one is lucky, okay? So as we move through these cycles, you're going to find that there's a lot of material for us to learn about. I'm taking my time with re-recording. If you ever get tired, please know you can always drop out. You don't have to attend live. Drop, come back whenever you're full, okay? Now, this is an important quote from Ra I'm going to explain to you, because oftentimes people misconstrue what it is. He says the program is not being forced on you. It's a vast ocean of information. It's a streaming ocean of information. We're only intended to take in what is correct for us. Boundaries, you know, having strong boundaries. Not getting lost in what we might think of as interesting when actually that doubt, it doesn't have any worth in our lives. We're only intended to take in what is correct for us, and what is correct for us, we may not know when enough is enough. We're not operating in alignment. See how easy it can be to get lost in the program? What we see here is the cellular matrix through the whiteness. And that whiteness is more plentiful than your definition. Even if you're like Oni, you remember her chart, tons of definition. Just because we see definition, we're only looking at two narrow points of imprinting. What about all the other lines, colors, tones, base that are not activated within that construct? You still get it. You get conditioning, okay? You get fixings, you get affectings. So when it comes to receiving the weather of the neutrino ocean, the data stream that's bombarding you, me, everybody, the program, if you will, it is something that we have no neutrino shield for. I don't remember how many, like a whole solar system of solid wall of, what is the hardest metal? Something, palladium or something really dense. Mercury, you know, can't go through that. Just like huge, uncomprehendable, incomprehensible amount to try and keep the neutrinos out. It's impossible. The only thing that protects us is our decision-making process of being our own authority. Because you put your authority in someone else, most likely it's a transit. Okay, so I want you to think of transits as people when they're connecting up with something inside of you, be it a channel, be it a gate, okay? They're probably people when it comes to the smaller inner planets. I'm going to repeat that over and over till you get it. Now, if you've got a whole bunch of people tickling your fancy because there's all these different people that are, let's say, lighting up your emotional system and you're not normally emotionally defined, and now you got all these suitors, sorry, I'm making it silly so you can remember, all these people that want to date you and flirt with you and you're feeling really turned on and touched. If you have sex with all those people, you're probably going to mess yourself up. All of them? Really? Don't be a pig. What's there for you in this smorgasbord of pastries? It's like the pastries of your life that every year new cycles come in, and now there's new people, and these people come and they go. They are there, don't you know? Have you seen it? Yeah, my daughter, my husband, my other husbands, seen those people there. They're there. They're people. But you don't want to like this, smorgasbord. You don't want to eat all of it. You'll really make yourself sick. But then you think, oh, but what if I never get another one of those again? It's the last one. There's only one of them. I got to eat that one, or I got to mate with that one, or I got to take that job, or I got to make sure. If you're a pig, you're not self, according to Ra, as in don't overdo it. Especially those of you with undefined sacral center, you know who you are. There may be one from the transit, the day-to-day transit, maybe this one. Yeah, I'll try that one. Maybe not so much. I'll put it back. Took a little bite out of that. Or, went on a date. Nah, maybe not. Just be careful. If you're operating in alignment, maybe one or two, maybe more, but be careful, because what happens is overwhelm. The not self gets overwhelmed quite easily. It thinks it must, it should, it has to. It has a huge case of FOMO. If you think about all undefined sacral centers, that's about what? Eventually, it's going to be maybe close to 30% of the population. Now add to that all the unconsciously divine sacrals. Oh boy, now we got a whole lot more people not knowing when enough is enough because they're not operating in alignment, because the general program is not for you. The program, to put it in a Locke's words, the program is not your life. Okay, the program brings all kinds of pain that you don't have to be subject to. Ross says the further away you are from yourself, the more likely it is that you will experience everything in the program. The more you are yourself, the more likely you will make the decisions as yourself and only have the experiences that are correct for you. The weather is about the possibilities in the imprint. The neutrino ocean brings you potentialities for experience. Now, just like weather, what kind of weather is it? We're looking at the weather when we're looking at a person's cycle plus their design. Okay, so what we're talking about in cycles analysis is it going to be sunny? Is there going to be rain? Do I need my galoshes again? When it comes to the background frequency, absolutely, strategy and authority. So depending on whether there's a lightning storm, or depending on whether we've got some nice fluffy clouds, a bit of rain, or some snow, and then there'll be sun again. When it comes to the weather, this too shall pass. In my years of helping people, and in my years of going through the shit storms myself, I know a lot of this work happens to be bedside manner, happens to be, for me, recognition of where people are at and empowerment of them in a new direction, one that's more authentic and aligned for them. Now, you're going to do your way. You're going to do, give them whatever interpretation is right for you to give with that connective field. And in the beginning, I can tell you this was one of the ones that I had the hardest time with because it seemed so overwhelming and too much. There's so many different ways, points of imprinting it could go. I'm going to teach you different priority levels of what to look at, because really, you could make an analysis last a really long time. I've been speaking slowly today, taking my time with it, going through all the depth and detail that I feel like giving you today. If you're working with a client who has no idea, they just got into human design. I want my Saturn cycle, and they're not even there yet. Well, you have some remedial work to do, to have a sustainable practice, and it is a practice, a human design consulting, coaching, analysis, whatever practice. You need to get good at this work, so do it as often as you can. I'm talking daily when you're looking at transits. It's going to help you tremendously. And use slides until you get so comfortable that you don't need them, if you ever don't need them. Now I see them as reminders. Then I usually only do them by request anymore because I feel I've gone beyond having to create slides for people, but that's me in my process. When we see the weather on a map, now look at double the activations, double the fun, not necessarily. You can see there's tons of activations. And so what does it mean that they're all there or wherever it is that they are? It depends on that person's design. How someone's going to operate in this weather pattern is totally determined by whether they are operating correctly or not. So again, to rephrase that, operating in not self, you get the full brunt of the hurricane or the tornado or the monsoon in your face, and your umbrella, it's toast. I know that sounds serious, but I'm feeling it, hearing it around me, and I'm seeing it. My friends and family, we see it. And I know it's not something that I can rescue, save, fix anybody from. They've got to go through their own trip. Remember, you too, we all have work to do when it comes to our own trip first and help them, guide them, but you can't do the work for them. So don't feel responsible for what they're going through, whether or not you can properly explain it. Trust your process, your design. If they're there in your life and it's correct for you to help them, you can do this work. And you are going to make mistakes in the beginning. Hi, queen of mistakes, princess of mistakes. I make them. It happens. Shit happens, right? I got the shit happens stream, aspect, channel, line, even color. So when you look at this, you can learn so much. It's like the trauma of what it is to be human, life. Yeah, when we look at these. So you look at any cycle chart. Now we're looking at a Saturn cycle. Remember, this is growing up time. So you will see that this data is plenty. I mean, you could go nuts talking about all of the data. You could start to analyze even the colors underneath when you get real advanced, like what's going on here, you know, and all of the different nuances. Okay, this person with this and that, and oh, maybe it's this guy. And we go and get their cycles from not only Saturn and Uranus and Chiron, but their solar cycles. And now you're looking at their partners and their children. And oh yeah, they're right there. You know, you see it. But that's usually too much for the average person. It really is. All you need for most people is that annual touch to remind them to be their own authority. Any little triggers that you're looking at where, oh, you really watch for this one because this person's, they're going to suck you into their whole values trip. It has nothing to do with you, but they're going to convince you that you've got to, you know, marry them, spend money, whatever. You'll see it in the chart. You'll recognize it over some time. There's so much data, I can't teach you all of the different situations or circumstances. We'd go crazy and we'd be here the rest of our lives. I don't mind. That's why I do these classes over and over again. So think about it. Because there's so much data and the impact on you is not the same all the time. It's unique and different based upon what planet is connecting up with what other planet. In other words, what person, your client, you or your client, connecting up with another person or people, might be multiple people, okay? This theme of the weather impact on you, whether it's good for you or not, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can tell you if it's going to be uncomfortable, intense, in your face, totally. But you might kind of like that. It might feel kind of like interesting and creative and fun. I don't know. You have to still be your own authority, because only you can make the decision about that connective field, that love relationship or not. Yeah. Whatever it happens to be, connected up in the person, the client's design, in order to not make good, bad, right, wrong predictions. I like to ask you to preface it with, you may notice, you may experience, or you may feel, or you may see, and you're going to, after you say you may, you're going to use keynotes specific to what that planetary activation happens to be, okay? It's going to be what is there. You can trust that. You can trust it when it's really, really specific, okay? You can ignore some of these things in here. They're not a priority. As an example, and I'll go over this again, don't worry that you have to memorize it. Connective fields like that, electromagnetics, connective fields like that, they are going to be, again, in your face. Things that are not really, they're just random. Let me look at here. This one, maybe not. You don't even have to, Ra wouldn't even look at it or analyze it. So don't feel like you have to do like everything for every cycle. This is a Saturn cycle. You're talking about a really long window. Yeah, 7.5 years minimum, 3.5 before, 3.5 after, and then the rest of your life, where this impact of the new costume was lived out and stored in the cells as a memory that you learned from, maybe, or not. But as long as you're correct and operating in alignment, none of this stuff matters. It's actually mind candy. Doesn't matter. Whether or not it is correct for you or your client, that's up to whoever's authority we're talking to. So I'll tell you, and it might be my design. A lot of people come to me and they want to know what to do because Laveena has very strong authoritative processes in this design. You know better, tell me, I'll do what you say, whatever. And back in the day, before I knew better, I would allow myself to be on that power trip. Oh, of course I know. I'm a projector. I can guide you. I see this is this. Okay, that sounds good. Rather than, oh, wait, oops, did it wrong. Did a mistake. Oops, created some karma there, guys. Pay attention. You don't want the karma. Bring it back to their authority. Ask them back if they're sacral generated. Invite them to wait on it and sleep on it because you can't tell them what to do besides strategy and authority, which you explain, obviously. You don't just say, follow your strategy and authority, you'll be just fine. Oh, you don't need this. No, it is interesting. It's fun to know this stuff. It's poking your head through the sky mechanically and seeing some of these interesting dynamics. So when you look at any cycle chart and you go nuts with all of the different information, here's Uranus opposition. In this example, we're seeing some different themes, and it's a totally different age of this man's life that he was living. And now look at this. You're going to notice some of the commonalities. Where are the patterns? Look at that, 4-1 on both sides. So very fixed fate on a one-way track, on a very specific track as far as seeing the specificity of what this man's life was during that time. This is what is impacting. The most important thing in the large life cycles, the cross, okay? The cross. And of course, put into context with the nodes. That's basically what those readings are about. And you've got enough as far as reminding them of who they are, any challenges that you see in the work of the movement towards purpose. Remember, movement towards purpose. Where's the purpose? Purpose. Here, Chiron return. Okay, Chiron return. So now you understand when people say, I don't have this. Yeah, you do. You have it in receptivity. And guess what? During your 50s, a new layering of a kind of imprinting comes in. And then we have new things that are part of your fulfillment of purpose that you're learning about, that are part of the drama or the dharma or whatever it is that you're doing in this life in order to, and then start to use the specific keynotes, support, empower, share, whatever it is. This is one of the most amazing things that you can do for someone that helps you guide them in that you're showing them as they're walking down their own road and seeing along that path a new chapter in their life with new people and ways of seeing along that path. There are no accidents. There are no coincidences. Everything is there for a reason. So these themes that are there to impact individuals, again, movement towards purpose. All that data, though, it's enough to overwhelm anybody. So again, I tell you, do it simply. Unless you really have lots of experience and you feel very comfortable and confident, Go as profound and deep as you'd like. Okay, I'm not going to judge. Now, again, if someone's not operating correctly, you can predict much of what is going to happen to them based on the frequency. So if you give them a solar cycle analysis, especially what will happen to them, absolutely, you can absolutely read. But then what you're doing there is you're giving them conditioning. I still remember the very first analysis I did and describing the nodal environment and having her come back to me, I don't know, like a month or two later and say, oh my God, that was exactly what happened. And just like, ooh, nothing to feed the mental power trip, like being accurate with some stuff. Until I learned, oh yeah, it's their trip. It's not my movie. It's their trip. They can tell me what it was like. So the may or the maybe, you may notice, use your phrasing, because then it won't bite you in the butt. Because what happens? Two things. If you use this material as prediction and it doesn't come true, my mind says, shame on you. Because guess what? They're going to come back and your reputation goes up in smoke. You said to do this and I didn't get that. I told you my thing I wanted. And you said, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Go for it. Looks like it's right there. Oh, yes. You have the channel of money this year. You're going to have some money come in. Wait, what? Not necessarily. Everybody remember, or not. It is an or not. If you really want to use your cycles, signposts as a development as a being, to your development as a being, then understand that when in the operation of alignment, when you're operating correctly as yourself, not only are you going to be able to be picky and choose, discern, and select what is right for you based on the value of what it is to you accordingly with your nature, your decision-making process. But you're also going to see, because you're aware of it, when you're watching with awareness the transits as they're happening, you're going to see everyone else's blind obedience to what the transit is saying. And that's another way of mechanically poking your head through the sky. Like, whoa, I can't believe those guys down there are actually believing this crap that they're feeding us in the media, because nodal environment, thank you very much. Blind obedience to the program itself. Everybody around you caught up in maybe their own program, their own trip. It is so not easy to go through this material alone without a partner or a buddy. I am telling you, if you have a friend, that was serious, my apologies. If it's right for you, if you have a friend or somebody that you can talk to about what you're learning in this particular class, in your cycles class, I would suggest that you create study buddies or, time for it to talk story with each other. As we say in Hawaii, talk story about chat about whatever it is that you're noticing. Did you see or did you hear? And what that does, every time you talk about it, it locks it in. You don't have to teach or do the analysis work to learn this stuff. Listen, talk. You're allowing yourself to change your frequency by being aware and paying attention. And this shows you when you're really operating correctly and you're seeing through the false ego I, in other words, the lie, not only your internal mental distortions, but everybody else's external. Like, it's so jarring when somebody starts hammering the nail in their own coffin, taking a knife and just stabbing themselves in the chest with their words. And what is it? Fucking transits. But how do you, as a friend, family, familiar, tell them? You can't unless they're studying this too, unless they're like open to it. So that's why I say, get a friend if you can, so that when you see these people around you, everybody's shooting all over everybody else, telling you what to do, that when they're taking in the program, everybody taking in these frequency imprints that may or may not be right for them, what you're doing is, in your sensitivity and vibratory nature of awareness, I personally, anyway, I channel that awareness into measure and compare out there, not in here. When I get a felt sense and I'm feeling cognition with emotional recognition of feelings, When I get a felt sense in my body, it will feel like this bucket of pain being poured all over. Ra's words. That will feel like a discomfort in my physical body. And then I'll ask the client about whatever it is that they just said or did, or, just try to kind of soften the energy and bring it up to their level of awareness, because nobody's going to walk around stabbing themselves if they're bleeding out. If they're bleeding out, they're going to go, oh yeah, that's not healthy. I won't do that. But when they're doing it with their words, with their frequency, and they're doing it on autopilot because of the transit, because they're not aware that, oh yes, this heaviness, this futileness, and oh, I'm a bad person, and oh, I shouldn't have done that, this week. Or, oh, it's just futile. Life is so oppressive. When you can see it in the transit together, especially with a friend, you can laugh at it and go, oh my God, that's totally a transit. That's not me, Oh, come back to my own reality. So the key with these frequency imprints, they're not all for us. We don't need this bucket of pain poured all over us. We don't. And only the not self suffers, quote unquote, raw. So what happens is taking in little dibs and dabs so that we're not drowning in a sea of sorrow. Everybody's here for certain things, certain truths, certain challenges that we have to develop through. And they're not easy. Who said life was easy? It's not. But sometimes people like to rise to the challenge. Fifth lines, wherever you're 5. You ever seen yourself rise to the occasion and be able to rescue, save, be the saint or whatever? If you're operating correctly, you're not controlled by the imprint of the cycle. You can interact with that environment as it is, taking advantage of the imprint as it's moving through you. Instead of being dominated by it, instead of being in submission to it, if you can be aware of what's moving through you without identifying it as something that you are, now you can take advantage of what's moving through you. So as an example, we've got an undefined throat. That undefined throat, not here to initiate conversation, unless in recognition and asking, or the awareness principle of what might be different, that engagement with the right people at the right time. Timing is everything for an undefined throat. So if something's coming through, activating in you, that defined now temporarily through transit, because definition technically is just what you were born with. So something's coming through, makes you feel like you've got to speak, you've got to speak, you've got to speak. And you can, my mind is saying control, but I don't believe that it's so for everybody. You can be aware of what's moving through you, meaning that pressure on, let's say it's a throat voice that you don't normally have. You've got a 17, no 62. The 62 comes in, and now you've got to share what you think. I think. Well, you could just share your thinkingness all over everybody, or you could wait and really appreciate the value of somebody honestly wanting to know what you think is true. And go from your response, go from your emotional clarity, go from your willful determination, whatever it is, splenic awareness or self-projected, whatever it is that you are, go from that, okay? Go from authenticity. And then you'll see the true differentiation potential of your cognitive awareness when you're operating in alignment. That's always the first, most important, central, and final say to any of this. One of the Ra's quotes that's really nice to remember is, it's not about eliminating conditioning. It's about eliminating the ignorance of conditioning. You see, any center that is open in you is your opportunity for wisdom. This is your opportunity through that filtering process, that once you stop identifying with what's moving through you, you can take advantage of what's moving through you. So in order to really understand cycles, we come to this place of experiential process. That means it lasts the rest of your life, or as long as it lasts for you as an interest